What if everything you believed about sex, aging, and masculinity was wrong? What if the silence in your bedroom wasn't a symptom of getting older, but of never being told the truth? You see, most men aren't afraid of aging. They're afraid of becoming invisible, afraid of waking up one day and realizing that the desire is still there, but their confidence, their connection, and their sense of self is not. I'm Dr. James, a urologist and men's health specialist who spent over 30 years helping men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond rediscover the intimacy they thought they had lost forever. And the truth is painful. Most men don't lose their sex life because their body gives up. They lose it because no one warned them how to evolve. In this video, I'll reveal 6 powerful sex and life secrets that older men wish they had known sooner. These aren't tricks. These are life-changing truths about hormones, resentment, trauma, touch, and the silent dangers hiding behind pride. One of these could save your relationship. Another could literally save your life. Let's begin with the first, and perhaps most misunderstood, truth about desire after 60, and why losing it may not be the real problem at all. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you enjoy this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. Secret 1. Desire doesn't retire, but it evolves. There's a quiet myth that follows men into their later years. The idea that desire fades with age, like hair color or muscle tone. That after 60 or 70, sex becomes irrelevant, maybe even inappropriate. That your yearning, your spark, should simply go away. But here's the truth most men never get the chance to hear. Desire doesn't disappear. It transforms. The need for closeness, for touch, for connection doesn't retire when you do. It doesn't pack up and leave your body just because the world expects you to act age-appropriate. In fact, for many men, the desire for intimacy grows richer and more meaningful with time. It just gets quieter and more complicated. You stop chasing the adrenaline rush and start yearning for something deeper. You want intimacy that isn't about performance, but about presence. A touch that lingers, not because it's leading to something, but because it means something. You want to be wanted, but not just for your body, for your story, for your soul. The problem is, no one ever told you this shift was natural. No one prepared you for the moment when your body slows down, but your longing doesn't. So instead of embracing this evolution, many men mistake it for failure. They internalize it, they withdraw, they think, if I don't want sex the way I used to, maybe I don't want it at all. But that's not true. Desire after 60 is more emotionally intelligent. It's not driven by hormones alone. It's fueled by memory, affection, trust, and a kind of emotional courage younger men rarely understand. That kind of desire can't be found in a pill. It can't be captured in a performance. It lives in quiet moments. The warmth of a familiar voice, the safety of being touched without expectation, the feeling of being seen after so many years of being invisible. And yet, most men have no roadmap for this. They've spent their lives taught to equate desire with ability, masculinity with frequency, sex with dominance. So when the rules change, they feel lost, ashamed. Some try to chase their younger selves, others give up entirely. But neither path leads to peace. What's needed is not a return to youth, but a return to truth. Desire doesn't retire, it matures. It stops shouting and starts whispering. And if you learn to listen, you'll hear it again. Sometimes in the way you miss her when she's gone, sometimes in the way your body still stirs when the lights are low and the house is quiet. Sometimes in the ache that isn't just physical, but emotional. A longing not to conquer, but to connect. It's in that space that real intimacy is reborn. The kind of closeness that doesn't depend on spontaneity or stamina, but on presence, emotional safety, trust built over time. When you let go of the belief that your worth is tied to your performance, you open the door to a kind of desire that's timeless. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about youth, it's about meaning. The question isn't, do you still want sex? It's, do you still want to feel alive? If the answer is yes, then you're already halfway there. What remains is the courage to relearn intimacy through a new lens, one shaped by wisdom, not ego, one where tenderness matters more than technique and closeness outlasts climax. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop judging yourself by the standards of your past, you begin to discover pleasures you never knew you were missing. Not just physical, but emotional, relational, spiritual. The quiet fire of being wanted not for your performance, but for your presence. So if you felt your desire shift, soften, or even confuse you, know this: it hasn't left you. It's waiting for you to meet it where you are now. In your body today, in your heart as it is, not as it was. And just when you begin to understand the emotional power of evolved desire, there's another truth waiting beneath it. A truth that could be silently affecting your energy, your mood, your body, and your entire identity as a man. Because the next secret has nothing to do with the mind or the heart. It's about the one hormone every man needs to understand before it's too late. If you're still watching and finding these insights helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're with me. Now let's move on to point number 2. Secret 2. Testosterone isn't just about sex, it's about identity. There's a quiet shift that happens in a man's life, and most don't see it coming. One day, you're waking up with energy, clarity, drive, feeling sharp, alive, grounded in who you are. And then slowly, almost imperceptibly, something begins to change. You start waking up tired. You feel foggy, disconnected. Your body doesn't respond like it used to, not just in the bedroom, but everywhere. Motivation dips. Mood becomes unpredictable. You're irritated by things that never used to bother you. You find yourself asking, what's happening to me? Most men think it's just aging, but often what's really happening is hormonal. More specifically, it's testosterone quietly leaving the room. And when that hormone starts to decline, it doesn't just affect your ability to perform, it starts to erode your sense of self. Because testosterone isn't just about sex, it's about identity. It's about how you show up in the world, how you move, how you lead, how you love, how you respond to challenge. It's the inner fire that helps you take initiative, protect what matters, and feel strong in your own skin. When that fire starts to dim, you can feel it not just in your body, but in your spirit. But no one tells men this. No one warns them that low testosterone can look like depression, that it can feel like chronic fatigue, that it can rob them of the very things they've built their lives on: confidence, focus, strength. And because no one says it out loud, men suffer in silence. They think they've just lost their edge. They joke about being grumpy, tired, or emotionally flat. But inside, they're wondering where the man they used to be has gone. I've seen men break down in my office, not because they couldn't have sex, but because they couldn't recognize themselves anymore. They didn't feel like the providers, the lovers, the leaders they once were. And it had nothing to do with laziness or weakness. It had everything to do with biology. But here's the part that's even more painful. Many of these men never get checked. They never ask. They're either too ashamed or too resigned. They assume nothing can be done, and so they live, half lit, half engaged, half alive, carrying a weight that isn't theirs to carry. The truth is, testosterone doesn't just fuel libido, it fuels life. And when it's depleted, everything suffers. Not just intimacy, but purpose, creativity, patience, and joy. The ability to feel proud of your reflection. The energy to pursue connection. The strength to show up fully for the people you love. But here's the good news. It's not too late. Testosterone can be tested. It can be restored safely, ethically, and naturally. Whether through lifestyle changes, stress management, nutrition, or medical therapy, thousands of men have reclaimed their vitality by facing this truth head-on. And in doing so, they didn't just regain their sex drive, they rediscovered themselves. And what's most powerful is this. When you restore testosterone, you're not chasing youth. You're realigning with the strongest version of who you've always been. The part of you that doesn't need to shout to be heard. The part that leads with grounded presence instead of brute force. That's what real masculinity looks like after 60. Not just erections or muscles, but integrity, direction, and quiet power. So if you felt off lately, tired, disconnected, unmotivated, it may not be just stress. It may not be just age. It may be your body's way of asking for help. And you have every right to answer that call without guilt, without shame. Because when you feel like yourself again, clear, steady, powerful, everything changes. Your relationships shift. Your posture changes. Your voice deepens. You begin to live from the inside out instead of hiding behind exhaustion and silence. And in that state, real intimacy, emotional, physical, spiritual, becomes possible again. But as powerful as testosterone is, it's not the only thing older men overlook that directly affects their ability to connect. Because what happens in your blood and hormones is only half the story. There's another force, quieter, but just as deadly. It's not in your body, it's in your marriage, in your bedroom, in your silence. And that's exactly where we're going next, because no hormone therapy can fix the invisible wounds caused by unspoken resentment. Secret 3. Unspoken resentment is the real bedroom killer. You can sleep next to someone for years and still feel 1,000 miles apart. You can share a bed, a mortgage, a life, and yet find yourselves disconnected in the very space that once held your most intimate moments. And most of the time, it doesn't happen in a single night. It happens gradually, quietly, through silence, through swallowed words, through tiny emotional wounds that never fully healed. For many older men, when sex begins to fade, the first instinct is to blame age or physical decline. It's my hormones, they say. I'm just not what I used to be. And yes, there are biological changes that matter. But too often there's something deeper at play, resentment. Not loud, angry arguments, not slammed doors or dramatic exits, but subtle, unspoken tension that's been growing for years, unresolved hurts. Disappointments never acknowledged, needs that were silent so long ago they were forgotten. That resentment doesn't always start in the bedroom, but it always ends up there, because sex isn't just about desire. It's about trust, safety, vulnerability, and when trust begins to fray, so does the desire to be open, to be touched, to be seen. What once was a space of joy becomes a space of pressure, of rejection, of performance anxiety. You stop reaching for your partner, or you do it without your heart fully in it, and they feel it. Over time, both of you stop trying. Men are taught not to speak of these things. We're told to tough it out, to be the rock. So instead of addressing the emotional undercurrents, we avoid them. We rationalize. We distract ourselves. We turn to work, TV, alcohol, fantasy, anything to fill the silence. But all the while, the gap between us and the person we love gets wider. I've had men sit in my office, tears in their eyes, trying to explain how they ended up in a sexless marriage they never wanted. We just drifted, they say, but drifting doesn't happen without a current pulling you away. And often that current is built from years of things left unsaid. Bitterness that was never named, pain that was never validated, and intimacy that slowly died. Not from lack of love, but from lack of courage to speak honestly. Resentment is a slow poison. It doesn't kill all at once. It erodes. It wears down your connection like waves against a stone. Until one day, all that's left is formality and routine. You still share a house, maybe even meals, but the emotional closeness, the laughter, the playfulness, the physical affection, it's gone. And without that, sex becomes hollow, or worse, non-existent. But it doesn't have to stay that way. Because here's the truth no one tells older men. Vulnerability is strength. Honesty is healing. And sometimes the most intimate thing you can do isn't to take your clothes off. It's to open your mouth and speak your truth. I've seen couples rebuild connection in their 60s, 70s, even 80s. Not because their bodies went back to what they were at 25, but because they dared to have the conversations they avoided for decades. They stopped trying to win. They started trying to understand. They gave each other space to be human again, to be flawed, forgiven, and loved anyway. So if you're in a relationship that feels distant, don't assume the intimacy is gone forever. Maybe it's just buried beneath layers of unspoken emotion. Maybe the spark isn't dead, it's just suffocating. Start with one question, start with one honest sentence. I miss us. I've been scared to talk about this. Can we try again differently? You might be surprised what doors those words can open. Because at the heart of sex, especially later in life, isn't youth. It's emotional safety. And when you rebuild that foundation, physical intimacy often returns on its own. Not rushed, not forced, but real, gentle, alive. But even when emotions are healed and connection begins to return, there's still one force that may be working silently in the background, rewiring your brain, your expectations, and your ability to feel. It's not your partner. It's not your age. It's something far more subtle and far more addictive. And it might just be the most common, least talked about destroyer of real intimacy in modern times. Let's talk about that next. If you're still watching and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 1 below to let me know you're here. Now let's keep going with point number 4. Secret 4. Touch heals trauma, even the hidden kind. There are wounds we carry that never show on the surface. Some were formed in childhood, moments when we reached out for comfort and no one was there. Others appeared in early adulthood, betrayals, rejections, relationships where intimacy was weaponized, withheld, or conditional. And some came much later in marriages where touch disappeared not because love vanished, but because life got heavy. Communication broke down and both partners quietly stopped reaching for each other. Most men don't talk about it. They call it growing distant or say, we're just not physical anymore. But beneath the casual tone is a deeper ache. One that's hard to name and even harder to admit. The ache of touch deprivation. Not just the absence of sex, but the absence of meaningful, affirming, healing physical contact. And here's what most don't realize. The human body doesn't forget. Even when the mind buries pain, the nervous system remembers. It remembers the tension in your shoulders when you were taught that boys don't cry. It remembers the flinch when love came with conditions. It remembers the cold space between you and your partner in bed night after night, and how you eventually convinced yourself not to care. But here's the truth that could quietly change your life. Touch can heal what words never could. Not performative, goal-driven touch, but present, intentional, compassionate touch. A hand resting on yours without expectation. A hug that says, I see you. Skin-to-skin moments where your body feels safe enough to soften, to let go, to breathe. That kind of touch is medicine. It doesn't fix the past, but it speaks to the part of you that was never comforted when it needed it most. In my practice, I've met men in their 60s and 70s who haven't been truly touched in years. Not since their wives pulled away emotionally. Not since they began avoiding connection, afraid of rejection or performance pressure. Not since they started telling themselves that this part of life was over. But I've also seen what happens when those same men gently, slowly allow themselves to be touched again. Not for sex, but for healing. I've watched their posture change. I've watched their breathing slow. I've heard them say, I didn't realize how much I missed this. Touch is more than comfort. It's communication. The kind that bypasses language and goes straight to the nervous system. It releases oxytocin, lowers cortisol, calms the fight or flight response, and reminds your body that it's not alone, that it's not too old to be held, that it's still worthy of tenderness. Many men have spent decades associating touch only with arousal. So when desire shifts with age, they assume the need for touch fades too. But in truth, the need grows deeper. You don't stop needing connection. You start needing it in a different way. a more grounded, more emotionally intelligent way. And when that kind of touch returns, it often unlocks parts of you that have been shut down for years. But healing through touch also takes courage, because to allow yourself to be touched, to receive without needing to perform, means lowering your guard. It means stepping out of your role as the provider, the protector, the strong one, and simply being human. Vulnerable, present, and that can feel terrifying, but it's also the beginning of real transformation. Because once a man learns to reconnect through safe, healing touch, he doesn't just reclaim intimacy, he reclaims parts of himself he thought were gone forever. The playful part, the affectionate part, the part that believes in love without needing to earn it. So if you found yourself avoiding touch, brushing off hugs, pulling away from closeness, I want you to ask, what are you really afraid of? Is it rejection? Is it shame? Or is it the unfamiliar feeling of being comforted when you don't have to prove anything? Because the next step in this journey goes even deeper, not into your body, but into your mind, into the hidden force that's quietly stealing your joy, numbing your emotions, and sabotaging your ability to feel anything at all. It's the addiction that nobody wants to admit, and it may be the very thing keeping you from the real connection you deserve. Let's talk about that next. Secret 5. Tech numbed your body more than time did. Most men believe the reason they don't feel as much anymore, less desire, less pleasure, less spark, is because of age, that their bodies are simply slowing down and there's nothing they can do about it. And yes, time leaves its mark. Hormones shift, response times stretch, but if you really look closely, something else has been happening in the background, quietly, steadily, for years. Something most men never suspect, because it's so common, it feels harmless. But it's not. It's the screen in your pocket, the one on your nightstand, the one you turn to late at night when no one's looking. Over time, technology hasn't just numbed your senses, it's rewired them. The body you think is broken might not be old, it might just be overstimulated, overexposed, and emotionally undernourished. Here's what no one tells you. Arousal is not just physical, it's neurological, it's emotional, it's relational, and what you consume, what you watch, scroll, listen to, conditions your nervous system. Constant novelty, digital stimulation, endless swipes and clicks, they all teach your brain to expect instant gratification without effort, without intimacy, without depth. Over time, your real life can't compete with the artificial one on the screen. You begin to need louder, faster, more extreme images just to feel a flicker of what used to come so naturally. The skin of a real partner, the rhythm of real connection, the small, unpredictable moments of human interaction. Suddenly they feel dull, too quiet, too slow. So you retreat, not because you don't care, but because you no longer know how to feel. Not fully, not deeply, not without help from something external. Men often turn to adult content in private. They tell themselves it's stress relief, harmless, normal. But when you do it consistently over months or years, something shifts. Your body may still function, but the emotions attached to touch begin to fade. The magic goes missing, not because you're no longer capable of intimacy, but because your wiring has changed. I've had men in their 60s sit across from me and say, "Doc, I just don't get excited like I used to." But when we dig deeper, we uncover years of screen-based habits that numbed their nervous system to reality. Some of them couldn't climax without stimulation from a device. Others had partners who felt neglected, compared to fantasies they could never live up to. And every one of those men believed they were alone in this. They weren't. This isn't about shame, it's about awareness. Because the body doesn't forget how to feel. It just needs time to relearn. And if you've been living with a hidden dependence on digital arousal, your first step isn't to try harder in the bedroom, it's to quiet the noise. Step back, rebuild your sensitivity. Let your body wake up again to slower things, to skin, to breath, to connection that unfolds over time, not in pixels per second. The tragedy is that many men don't realize how deep the damage runs until the real thing no longer feels good. And that's where the spiral begins. Avoidance. Distance, guilt, disconnection. But the hope lies in this. Neuroplasticity is real. Your brain can rewire. Your body can respond again. Not with the fake fire of artificial highs, but with the warm, steady burn of real intimacy. It starts by choosing presence over stimulation, turning off the noise long enough to notice your partner's breath, their voice, the way their hand lingers on yours. These are the moments that rebuild your capacity for closeness. Not instant, not dramatic, but honest, human, and deeply healing. Because the truth is, the very thing you've been using to feel more might actually be causing you to feel less. Not because you're too old to enjoy intimacy, but because you've forgotten what real intimacy feels like. But while screens numb us over time, there's another danger that doesn't wait quietly in the background. It's not subtle. It's sudden. And for many men, it comes in the exact moment they feel the most alive. It's not about emotional disconnection or overstimulation. It's about pushing your body one step too far, and sometimes not living to tell the story. Let's talk about that next. Secret 6. The most dangerous time to have sex is when you feel proved right. There's a moment in every older man's life that can be both beautiful and dangerous. A moment when he feels like himself again. Maybe he's lost some weight, maybe he had a good checkup. Maybe he locked eyes with someone across the room and felt something stir inside that he hadn't felt in years. Suddenly, there's a rush of energy, of confidence, of pride. I've still got it, he thinks. And for the first time in a long time, he's not just thinking about sex, he's ready to prove something. To his partner, to the world, to himself. But that's exactly when the danger creeps in. Because when a man tries to prove he's still who he once was, he often forgets that his body has changed, even if his desire hasn't. He forgets that sex, especially after 60, isn't just an emotional experience or a celebration of connection. It's a physical event, one that puts real demands on the heart, the lungs, the blood vessels. One that without preparation and awareness can turn from joyful to tragic in seconds. I've seen it too many times to count. Men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s who felt a sudden wave of passion or validation and charged into intimacy with the urgency of a man half their age. They skipped their medication. They drank too much. They took a little blue pill without asking their doctor first. And they stepped into the bedroom not as themselves, but as the version of themselves they felt pressured to prove still existed. Some got lucky. They left with nothing more than shortness of breath or bruised pride. Others weren't so fortunate. I still remember Leonard. He was 74, charming, smart, still sharp in every conversation. He'd recently started seeing someone new, someone younger, and he was glowing with a kind of joy he hadn't known in years. "Doc, I've got to keep up," he laughed during a visit. I warned him gently. His heart wasn't what it used to be. I told him sex is exercise, and just like running a race, you don't just jump in after years off the track. You train, you warm up, you know your limits. He smiled and nodded. But 2 weeks later, he collapsed in a hotel room. His heart simply couldn't take the strain, and by the time help arrived, it was too late. What broke me most wasn't just the loss, it was that it didn't have to happen. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't careless. He was just caught in a moment of pride, of passion, of desperately wanting to feel powerful again. And in that split-second choice to ignore his body, he paid the ultimate price. That's the silent truth about sex in later life. It's not just about what you want, it's about what your body can safely give. When we try to recapture the past without respecting the present, we put ourselves and our partners at risk. And not just physically, because when a man experiences a health scare in the bedroom, it can fracture more than just his confidence. It can rupture the intimacy that was just beginning to return. But this isn't a warning meant to instill fear. It's a call for reverence, for responsibility, for the kind of strength that doesn't need to perform but chooses to be present. Because real masculinity in later life doesn't mean proving you're still young. It means honoring the man you are now. wise, aware, and connected. So if you ever find yourself fueled by that sudden surge of validation, ask yourself, what am I chasing? Is this about connection or control? Am I showing up as myself or a version of me I'm afraid to lose? Because when intimacy becomes a proving ground, it stops being safe. But when it becomes a shared space of mutual care and trust, it becomes more powerful and more fulfilling than it ever was in youth. And now that you've heard all 6 truths about the body, the brain, the heart, and the quiet battles men rarely talk about, there's one final thing I want to leave you with, because information is only half the story. What matters most is what you do next. And in this last message, I'll show you how all of this comes together and how these years ahead can still be your most meaningful yet. Conclusion: it's not the end, it's the turning point. By now, you've heard the 6 secrets, truths that many older men never get the chance to learn until it's too late. They aren't just about sex, they're about identity, about connection, about reclaiming the parts of yourself that you thought were fading with time, but were really just buried under silence, fear, or outdated expectations. The biggest myth we tell men is that growing older means growing colder, emotionally, physically, and intimately, that once your body changes, your value somehow diminishes. That the desire for touch, closeness, or vulnerability becomes something to hide, or worse, ignore. But the truth is, your body isn't betraying you, it's inviting you into a new chapter, one with deeper awareness, one that demands more intention, more emotional honesty, more presence. And if you accept that invitation, not with resistance, but with courage, you'll find that intimacy in your later years can be more powerful, more fulfilling, and more meaningful than anything you experienced at 25. You've learned that spontaneity fades, but depth grows. That testosterone isn't about performance, it's about presence. That unspoken emotions can silence desire faster than age ever could. That touch, even the simplest kind, can mend years of emotional distance. That technology has numbed us more than time ever has, and that the most dangerous moment isn't when you feel weak, but when pride dares you to ignore your limits. These truths aren't warnings, they're wisdom. They don't shame you, they free you. They give you permission to redefine masculinity not as pressure to perform, but as the power to connect. To slow down, to speak up, to hold someone's hand not because you're expected to, but because you want to feel alive, right now in this moment. Maybe you saw yourself in these stories. Maybe you remembered a moment that hurt more than you let on. A night you pulled away when what you really wanted was to be held. Or maybe you've spent years in silence wondering if that part of life is simply over. It's not. The flame is still there. It may flicker differently, it may burn slower, but it still matters. You still matter. And the truth is, this chapter of your life, if you choose it, can be the most honest one yet. One where you stop performing and start connecting, where you stop proving and start feeling, where your body, your heart, and your partner are no longer separate players, but part of the same song. So don't walk away from this unchanged. Have the conversation. Book the appointment. Reach for your partner's hand. Let go of what intimacy used to be and step fully into what it can be, now with more courage, more truth, and more heart than ever before. Because aging isn't the end of your intimacy story, it's where the real one begins.